Welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Thanks for joining us this morning. And we have a little different edition of today's Tampa Home Talk. And the mission of our show when we started this thing 14 years ago was to help and help people keep and maintain great credit, live within their means, build wealth, talk about anything in and around the real estate space. Because goodness knows the real estate market was crashing at that time. If you've been around for any period of time and you owned real estate, you understand that one. And we've changed our format a little bit. So we're bringing in some new people, interviewing them, not on the live radio stream anymore, which might be a surprise for some of you. So hopefully you're subscribed already to the podcast, which means you can catch it anywhere. You can tell Alexa, play Tampa Home Talk. You can listen to us on Spotify, any of your streaming radio platforms, anywhere you pick up a podcast. Apple, yeah, any of the, and Google has one too, but
sure.
Anywhere where you listen to podcasts, like Podbean is one. I know the big ones are like Spotify.
And this morning
Apple.
we're on Facebook.
Yeah, streaming live on Facebook. Cool story for you today. We have Mr. Ken Young in the house, and we're going to talk about his background. He's a local Tampa guy here, lives in the area, and has quite a background. It was pretty fascinating. I was reading over your bio this morning before you came in.
Hey, it's been just a great career. Tampa's been terrific also. But it's something that I've always been interested in, sports and recreation, and so I combine a great area with all those sports and recreation and sell a few hot dogs and beers in the meantime, too.
I love it. So you're originally from Philadelphia. You can hear the Philly a little bit in the accent there.
Yeah, in Philadelphia. And actually, although I didn't think this was going to be my career, the fact is I was a vendor when I was in high school at Franklin Field, which is where the Philadelphia Eagles played. So I started actually selling hot dogs and sodas back in my teens.
And that's how you kind of made your way into this business?
It is. I actually had an interview. I'm a Penn State grad, had an interview in my senior year, and the interviewers with at the time it was ARA Services, now Aramark, but they saw that vending on my resume, said, "Hey, how would you like our recreation division?" I said, "Well, what is it?" And they said, "Well, it's food service and sports arenas and stadiums and things like that." I said, "That's what I want to do."
So you knew when you were young that's the direction you wanted to do something in that field?
Well, I was interested in food service, but I didn't know what type of food service. I had no idea until that interview. And once I saw, oh, wow, you can make a profession out of that and a career, I said, yeah, that's neat.
So what were your responsibilities at that time? You interviewed for a position. What was the actual position, and what were you doing? You were young 20s, right?
At the time, matter of fact, 21. And that interview, I actually, once he said what it was, and then I had to go through a few more, I was actually hired for an experimental program, food service program they had. So I could have taken, besides recreation, I could have taken hospital food service, college food service, what they call business and industry and office buildings and things like that. But I stuck with recreation, and I'm a Philadelphian. The company was based in Philly, and the fact is that my first assignment was in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. So that was pretty neat because the Spectrum was the major arena in Philadelphia. And I still remember to this day, I used to come home after concerts and I smelled like a joint. I mean, I'll tell you, because the arenas weren't as well air-conditioned in those days. And, oh, man, the grass that was floating around was something. And I thought, well, okay, this is the way it's going to be. Got a lot better in the later years, though.
So what was your position that you took? Like, what did you do? What was your responsibility?
So I started out really assisting in stocking stands, bringing stuff up from the warehouse, making sure there was enough in those venues. But then I got transferred to Providence, Rhode Island, where I was an assistant in the arena there. And that was a great learning experience. I worked for a guy who just was so helpful in teaching me. and I learned all the accounting. I learned the controls. Back in those days, everything was cash, which is different than today.
Mm-hmm.
But it all was that was great for about 3 years.
You were an assistant to who? What did you
I
do?
was an assistant to the general manager of the
Okay.
food service. So I was running the concessions operation. And back in those days, concessions consisted of sodas, beers, hot dogs, popcorn, maybe one or two other items,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it, unlike today. And we'll get to today after.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. Now, that was such a busy building that you hardly ever took a day off. Between November, I got there November 5th of 72, and between then and the middle of April, you maybe had 3 or 4 days off because the building was so busy. But we ran all those events, the food service for all those events, no matter what it was, and saw a lot of neat talent that today almost the older members of your audience would remember. You know, Elvis Presley and
Hey, not everybody can say they did that, right? Not everybody can say that.
It was pretty neat, and there was a lot of sports in those buildings too. And from there, I did a racetrack in New England because in the summer times the buildings weren't that the Civic Center in Providence wasn't that busy, and so I did Bay State Raceway, which is where Gillette Stadium now stands in Foxborough, Massachusetts, and eventually went on to Indianapolis to run an arena's food service there. And finally, after I switched companies, went to Kansas City, where I worked in the Kemper Arena and the Truman Sports Complex. And finally, in the mid-'80s, and this is after I did some corporate stuff and ran sales and marketing for us corporately and so forth, I started my own business.
Okay. And what did you do?
So even before that, in 77, before I started my own business, I was transferred to Tampa to run the food service in Tampa Stadium. So I was the GM.
The old
there.
sombrero, huh?
The old sombrero,
Okay.
yep. And I have some great memories, but one of my memories is a funny one there, and it was in 1979 in early December. The Bucs had to win against Kansas City to clinch the division title. And back in those days, you know, those first 3 years of the Bucs birth, let's say, they were horrible.
We were known as the Yucks.
That's right, known as the Yucks. But
Yeah, back in those days, you know, one ticket was the prize.
Yeah.
And 2 tickets was not a prize at all.
Exactly. So, you know, we come down to the last game of the season against Kansas City, place sold out. We're looking for a huge day, and it just pours from 11 o'clock on.
Yeah. Welcome to Tampa.
And I remember our office was in a corner of the end zone at Tampa Stadium, and the water for the entire first half was just rushing down those steps. It was something to see, but you know, it wasn't great for sales. And because of the weather, nobody could score. The Bucs scored a late field goal to win that game 3-0.
They didn't postpone it for weather. They played
no. Today, I don't remember if there was lightning, but they would have played through lightning then. Today, they wouldn't. But no, the weather just that water was something. And I think finally towards the end of the game it began to clear up, but it was unusual because, as you know, here in Tampa you don't get that kind of a deluge for 5 or 6 hours. And but that was just a funny memory. But they won that title, and then the next week.
I think wasn't Leroy Selman with them at that time?
Yes,
I think he was.
Yes, he was. The next week, 5 days later, my first child, a son, was born, and that was at St. Joe's Hospital. And before we took him home, we brought him over to Tampa Stadium. I can't say let him crawl on the turf, but we put him on the turf. And then 2 days after that, the Bucs beat Philadelphia, and they were close to going to the Super Bowl. So that was just a great memory of that. But I was lucky. I stayed in Tampa for 6.5 years. Went to Chicago, our corporate headquarters, for 2 years. Decided to start my own business, and that was in the same thing: stadiums, arenas, things like that. And you know, I had that business for 30-some years until 2017 or so.
What was the name of the business?
So back in those days, it was leisure and recreation, but Ovations was the main business that grew very big. That one, you know,
What? No, was that concessions for major sports things? Was it?
That was concessions and what we call premium food service. So a lot of catering, sweets. You know, over the evolution of the business, the arenas and stadiums became much, much nicer. The food service we provided became, the menus became much more plentiful.
I was going to say the club and the whole suite thing, like that's definitely evolved. That didn't exist in the 70s.
No, that
right?
did not exist. And it, yes, that really has evolved so that you ended up with a lot of good, you know, high-end food service, although the profitable part was still in the concessions. And, you know, we just added one account at a time. I had a partner, and we just kept adding one account at a time. And then I got into the minor league baseball business, and so that really helped our food service business because I got to know all those owners of other teams. And
so then they would contract your company to do the concessions for their stadium.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, a lot of them were what we call self-operators. And when I talked to them, they'd say, yeah, it would be easier if you just ran this. And that's how we got our first 10 accounts, I would say.
That's awesome.
And then we kept growing it. And one day I said to my partner, I said, you know, we got to get some wintertime business. All we have is summertime business. And then I said, let's go after arenas and convention centers. So we did that. And then we went after Native American casino food service.
Okay.
And we got a bunch of those. And we did a lot of others, zoos and aquariums.
Any place they have concessions, right?
That's right. Any place that needed food service.
So it's, and your degree is in that, right? And I think I read that on your bio. So what made you want to buy a minor league baseball team? And what was that process like? Was that expensive? How old were you? How'd you come up with the funds to do that? Like, what was the story behind that?
Well, those are all great questions.
I know. I'd like to just throw them at you.
That's what I wanted to ask. So I'm glad you did this.
Because I sure couldn't afford that. You know,
how old were you? Can I ask you that?
Oh, sure. When I bought my first team, I was 43. Yeah.
And this was what year,
43,
roughly?
93.
So in the
1993.
early 90s.
And you know,
and so that was really, let's talk about this for a minute. That was pre-internet, right? So it's not that, I tell my kids all the time, the day and age of when we grew up, and you're a little older than me, but I'm still old enough to remember there wasn't the internet when I was around. We had to go to the library or read a book or find another way to get information. Mentors were not as abundant as they are today. Like these kids have access to any mentor really very easily between social media and just all. It's just so easy. It's at their fingertips. It was not that way when I was young and when you were young. So if you're in your early 40s. In the early 90s. And how the heck did you get this idea to buy a minor league baseball team? And how did that process come about? Like, where did that come from?
Well, you know, I was lucky. It came to me through someone else. And through my career, I had been involved in the Baltimore Orioles Stadium in Baltimore. And a gentleman by the name of Al Harrison had worked for them, their VP of business. He then went to the Mets. And I stayed in touch with Al for 10 years. And finally, I was in my own business then, and read about in the early 90s a new stadium that was going to be built in Norfolk, Virginia. So
where'd you read that? Do you remember?
I do. I read it in a little publication called Amusement Business.
Okay.
Just a little paragraph. And I thought, oh, you know, let me see what's what. So I contacted the GM there. He put me in touch with the Mets because the Mets owned what was then the Tidewater Tides in Norfolk, Virginia. Well, the person I was going to deal with was this guy, Al Harrison. So I thought, oh, this is great. And it took a while. We negotiated a deal. And then a month later, he came to me and said, Ken, he said, we're probably going to sell this franchise because the Mets actually owned the franchise. And he said, we think we can work with you. How would you like to buy it? This is exactly the way it went. I was in a small office at the time, and for 2 weeks, I thought about it. And I thought, I need to see if I can make this work because I didn't have the money. And I need to see if I can make this work. And I'm a big believer in opportunity. And, you can't make all those opportunities work. But in that case, I called some people up. I thought, okay, let's see if we can raise the funds and so forth.
So today that would be what they call like angel funding or angel investors, or,
Well,
or the online like fund Kickstarter is a good one. Okay,
right. I learned a lot doing that because the one big thing is everybody will tell you they're interested. Half of them can't afford it, and
so how did you do that in the early 90s? Again, the day and age of technology today, you just do a Kickstarter and you can get someone in another country that would invest in your idea if they like it. But that was not the case in the early 90s.
No, it was a lot of phone calls, a lot of putting feelers out. And it was all done on the phone. It wasn't done via the internet because that was just starting.
It didn't really exist back then.
Yeah. And, it was a case of just talking to a lot of people, making some presentations to people. I remember one in particular in Norfolk, and the place was being built, a new stadium being built at the time. And I made this luncheon presentation, and a gentleman walked up to me and said, yeah, I like this, and gave me a personal check for $850,000. And I thought, whoa, that was... that's something.
So how did you connect with these folks? It's in the early 90s, right? It's not like you can just go get them on LinkedIn.
I know. I'll tell you sometimes.
I'm kind of poking fun at the kids today, but because I'm trying to get them to understand how hard that was back in that day.
It was all through word of mouth. And you talk to people who would talk to other people and say, I know a guy who might be interested in this. And that was the way it came about. And then we purposefully tried to get a lot of people in Norfolk, Virginia. And sometimes that works, and I found sometimes it doesn't work, So,
Ken, how did you figure out who you were going to approach? Like, how did you figure out who you were going to deliver presentations to and talk to?
Part of it was through a few people in the area, especially in Norfolk, who knew other people and could give decent references and say, you know what, he or she can afford something like this.
Right.
And so you tried to, because you didn't have, as you stated, you didn't have the research to look it up to see are these people for real.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times maybe they weren't.
Did you use the Hill Donnelly back in the day?
I will tell you, we were able to make it happen. And by the way, the Mets were extremely patient with me. I still remember, this is after we knew we were going to have the money and so forth. But the first meeting I had with all of the Mets, not just Al, but all of the Mets in New York and Shea Stadium. And at the time, I thought to myself, this is pretty cool. Come into the boardroom in New York and meet with the Mets. And I've always been a big baseball fan. And so we finally made it happen. In April of 93, we actually didn't close on it until May of 93, but that was just because of convenience. The Mets were going to play an exhibition game. So we closed on it in 93. It was a good investment right from the beginning. The attendance was much greater than what we thought. The food service per caps, the amount each person spends was a lot better. So it was a good business for us. And
so Ken, your role at that time as a partial team owner, right, I guess is a good way to say it, was to maximize attendance. So really make sure you could sell tickets, make sure you can maximize concessions, make sure you're selling stuff that people will buy. And that's how you raise money to ultimately make this whole thing work, right?
Yeah. So I had a full-time staff there. And I was learning. I had a great general manager who had, at that time, 40 years of experience. And he and I didn't always see eye to eye on the marketing because he was old line. I was trying to bring some new things into it. But he taught me the business, too. And I was there all the time, in the summertime anyway.
Yeah.
The family lived up there. And so it was one where I presided over the business. And so I kept the investors informed. And the biggest thing was that the day-to-day business. But the other thing that was so important about it was I would walk that stadium every single night during games. I would watch maybe the last 4 innings, but during the walk-in and the first few innings, I would just talk to the fans. I'd talk to our patrons, and they got to know me pretty well. If something wasn't right, they would immediately tell me. And I didn't take it as just some frivolous complaint. There's something wrong here. More often than not, it had to do with parking that was controlled by the city. But still, that was extremely important, and that's before the people ever get into the place.
It's part of the whole experience.
Yeah, it is. And so I wanted to make sure they were happy and that they leave happy, which one of my...
because if they have a great day, they're going to come back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of my signature items with all of the clubs I owned was at the end of every single game, we would have a kids' base run, not just a special Sunday afternoon or a special, on a holiday or something, but after every single game, weather permitting, that the kids could run the bases. And I thought, the parents love watching them, the kids love doing it, and that will help bring them back. And so that was one of the marketing things that we did. My GM, as I said, once in a while, we didn't see eye to eye on marketing. Well, he was a stickler for everybody paying to get into the park, and I understood that. But I got to tell you, you could be 2 months old. He wanted that baby to have a ticket. So I changed that policy to something that's now pretty much the norm in sports, and that is under 2 years old, you can come in without a ticket. So
I don't know why you'd want to bring a kid that young, but I know some people do.
Oh, they do. Yeah. They definitely do. But it was one of those things where the fans at least knew that I was open to them. And 10 years later, and in the meantime, the food service business was going very, very well. And 10 years later, I bought another team in Calgary and moved that to Albuquerque, New Mexico, who had lost their team. And they became the Albuquerque Isotopes.
So was part of that opportunity in seeing a team maybe that's not doing so well, having the opportunity to buy them and then move them to a different area where they could thrive?
Well, yes to that, but also when Albuquerque lost their team to Portland, Oregon, I knew Albuquerque was a very good baseball city. They did need a new stadium, so we always, for the last 20 years, we've heard, or more than that, we've heard about that here in Tampa Bay.
Yes.
They needed a new stadium.
Well, the
it's still
Rays
going
are
on,
dealing
right?
with some major issues right now.
Bringing up that note, what about the Rays? What's your opinion about the Rays? Where should they be? What do you think's going to happen?
Tampa proper?
So, yes, as a matter of fact. And I felt that way since the late 70s.
Where the heck would we put them?
So,
like geographically thinking about Tampa, where do you think?
You read so much. I do think if Darryl Shaw still has the property near Ybor, I think that's a great place to
centrally
go.
Located.
And I think it would be so good for Ybor, too.
Yes.
I mean, that's one where you can make the case where government money would, in helping build the stadium, that it would do so much for the area.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, in the late 70s, because I worked in Tampa Stadium, I used to go to the Tampa Sports Authority monthly meetings. And there was about a 6-month period that they debated whether maybe building a stadium in one of the parking lots at Tampa Stadium would be the way to go to build a baseball stadium. And it made so much sense. Now, they couldn't pull it all off, and St. Pete decided to build without having a team and so forth. So, but I am a firm believer it should be on the Tampa side of the water.
Yeah.
And
easy access by the interstate.
Yep. I think all of those things, and I do think that would make it much more successful.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that would go to baseball if it was closer. Like for me, I preferred to watch football. I would go to baseball, but that would probably be my third. So for me, and I'm a female that likes sports, it would be football, hockey, baseball would be last. And my son played baseball a lot as a kid and stuff, so it's not that I don't like it. I would go.
Right.
And I had another thought too, which I'll share in a minute, but I can tell you for sure if it was more centrally located like what you mentioned, I probably would go to a game or two a year. And I was thinking about some of the stuff you said, and it would be interesting to hear your background and how you did this, but you were talking about like bringing the kids on the field. And I think about what it was like to go to a football game, back in the day in the 70s, 80s, even 90s for that matter, and what it's like to go to a game now. Like if you were to go to a Bucs game now, and I think about all the little things as you and I are talking, right? And just making sure that people are happy and they come back and they have a good time. So thinking about that whole thing, everything from like their experience walking down on the field near the ship, all the little things that they do, all the little goofy, silly stuff during the game. Like they're pretty exciting. You could not like football and still very much enjoy a game.
For sure. One of the things, and that's something else that's evolved. I mean, the NFL was fairly sterile for a while, but I think they probably learned from other sports too that you can do all these other things, still keep the game intact. And let's face it, football is the number one sport out there now. Yeah. But you can do all those things on the scoreboard and that's the other thing. Scoreboards have evolved.
Yes.
That they are the entertainment. I mean, besides the sports on the field, but they're the entertainment.
Shoot,
now.
You can see the Megatron better than you can the field.
Yeah, and a lot of people just glue their eyes up there,
Yeah.
So, but it is, I tell you, video, music, all of those things are what keep the people entertained in all sports.
I have to share this just because, you're from Philly. So the other thing too with the games, if you've ever, and I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but I know it's like this in Tampa. If you're at a game, there's a number that'll tell you can text if someone's being like disorderly or whatever issues. Every time the Bucs would play the Eagles, I saw crazy stuff, like to the point to where I'm like, I don't even want to go to a game if they're playing the Eagles. Because, I mean, just crazy stuff, like fans unruly. Like I saw Philadelphia.
I think that could be his team.
I saw a Philadelphia Eagles fan literally spit on a cop. Like it was just nonsense, like crazy stuff. And I'm like, okay, for the longest time, the Eagles were the only NFL stadium in the whole country to have a brig right under their stadium.
Yep.
Probably have more than one now. But anyway, it's a different animal for sure.
It is. And it's funny. And Pat just said, hey, the Eagles are still my team, although so are the Bucs. But I stick up for Eagles fans most of the time. But you do have a handful of them that get a little bit too carried away.
Yeah.
And, I still remember one of the first pro games I ever went to was the game where fans were throwing snowballs at Santa Claus in Philadelphia.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. I was about 10 years old
Poor
at the time.
Santa.
But I still remember that. And you still read about it, too.
No, why were they whacking Santa with a snowball?
Oh,
Why?
I don't know.
Just being honoring?
It's not as though those Philadelphia fans who are unruly now. It was probably 2 generations ago or something.
Yeah.
But they were still the same type of fan.
So one of my bucket list items, Ken, was to go see, an NFL game in every stadium in the country. It's one of my bucket list items. Preferably if the Bucs are playing there. It doesn't always happen with divisions and stuff. But the one place I think I might be afraid to go to a game at would be Philadelphia.
So, it's funny because people, and this is only half joking really, but don't wear an opposing, don't wear a Dallas Cowboys shirt in Philadelphia going to a game or something like that.
I'd want to wear my Bucs jersey.
I know.
I guess my second ticket would be the bodyguard I have to hire to go.
And I do think a Bucs jersey, although we've beaten the Eagles in a lot of big games, but I think a Bucs jersey might not be quite as difficult in Philadelphia to wear as
it's not their biggest rival.
Yeah, as some of the others, the Giants or Cowboys. But those fans, they're tough fans. No question about it.
Wearing the Bucs jersey and the Saints.
Ken, what is one of your favorite stadiums?
One
to
of my
attend?
Well, on the baseball side, there are 2 probably. The Colorado Rockies is a great stadium with the mountains in the background. And then Dodger Stadium is one, too, except for the traffic to get out. Dodger Stadium is another one that's just really a neat stadium to watch a game. And there's so many good ones around now that, and I will tell you, in the NFL, those stadiums are just terrific stadiums.
The evolution of this is incredible. I will tell you, I don't know if you like artwork or you follow anything, but like, for example, the piece of artwork I have right when you walk in our office was created by an artist named Michael Goddard. And Michael Goddard was commissioned by the Vegas, they're the Raiders now in Vegas.
Right.
He lives in Vegas. So he was commissioned to do murals all over the stadium associated with the Raiders. So that's totally on my list because I love his artwork and I want to go see what he did to the stadium. So that'd be one of those things where this whole, it's not just the game, like it's an experience. You're there for hours before the game even starts to kind of check out this artwork. And he's pretty famous. A lot of people have his artwork. A lot of celebrities have his artwork. So it's gotten really expensive. But I think it would be so fascinating to, I mean, think about that, the evolution of a game. You're not just going to go see the football game anymore. You have somebody like me that wants to go to literally see the artwork in the stadium before you see the game.
Well, that's why I go to the Hard Rock, so I can see all the memorabilia.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, one other thing that I wanted to bring up because it is kind of local, and that is eventually back 2004, I think it was, I bought a hockey team in Norfolk, Virginia, and we became affiliated with the Lightning. And we won a title in 2012 called the Calder Cup, a championship that had a bunch of future Lightning players on it. And John Cooper was our head coach. So Coop, a year and a half later, he came to the Lightning and won a couple Stanley Cups, and he's won along the entire way. But
just a couple, no big deal.
But that was so much fun, winning titles, which you don't do very often, but when you do, it's just such a great time.
So I love your story, and I would love to share with the person listening, like maybe it's a young person watching this show on social media or listening to the podcast. And again, I want to just comment on how easy it is for the kids nowadays to connect with people. If someone's young like you and they're listening to this and they're trying to figure out what direction their career should go, but there's something they like, and you know, what advice would you have for them? And I think it's so fascinating, by the way, that you did this whole, because you've owned 6 minor league sports teams, 5 baseball teams, 1 hockey team. I mean, it's a pretty stacked resume you have of your accomplishments. So if you're talking to a young person today that's trying to figure out how to follow their journey, whatever it is, what would you tell them?
Well, and I really enjoy and love talking to younger people who are on career paths and speaking to college classes and things like that. So, but my advice is, first of all, try to figure out, sometimes you can't do it till you get into the business world, but try to figure out what really turns you on. What do you really like?
What lights you up and doesn't feel like work?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Doesn't feel like work. You might be working 100 hours, but it doesn't feel like it.
It feels like fun.
It is. It's fun and so forth. And my biggest advice to people, too, is in the beginning, and when I say, let's just say getting out of school, or maybe you didn't go to school and you're just starting to work, but don't do it just for the money. Try to learn as much as you can in those early years, because if you can learn things as quickly as possible and build on those, the money will come eventually. Yeah. Just don't. It doesn't have to be the number one priority. And I realize for some people who have nothing and need to live, that's difficult. Yeah. But it's something that if you can do it that way, to do it. But look for where your interests are and what can basically turn you on, as you said, and then really go for it, and don't be afraid to work hard.
That's a big thing I'll touch on that I think a lot of the generation today misses, because they're so caught up in we're in a consumption-based society, and that's all they look at. I mean, the young kids will move jobs for 50 cents more an hour. And all the smart people I know that are wealthy, that have built incredible businesses and lives, you know, multimillionaires, many of them. I'm thinking about even Gary Keller in his book that he wrote, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. There's a chapter in there where he very explicitly says when you're first starting in a career, you have to work to learn first. And then that's when, you know, when you're working to learn, then later you work to earn. But you have to put yourself in that position to do that. And I think when I think about this and I look at some of the younger generation today, that's what most of them are not willing to do. So if you're willing to do something different than maybe your peers are doing, right? You want to sleep on on your parents' house, right, or on a friend's couch for longer, and you don't have debt, you don't do a lot of the stuff that the society and your peers tell you is what you should be doing. And I think it will make you a very different, very successful adult on the other side of that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, and don't be afraid to put those long hours in and so forth. I always tell people that, for most of my career, our major business was nights, weekends, holidays, all of those things.
Yep.
And that just became a way of life. But and in the sports business, it was the same way, obviously.
I think about in real estate. I can't tell you the times I worked. I mean, sometimes I still work long hours, even though I'm trying to retire. But it's the 80, 90-hour work weeks. You're out nights and weekends. You're missing dinner with your family. And the generation, they're just the right now culture. I can't even explain it. It's so hard to tell them that. And and they're like, I have two girls in the business constantly trying to drag me in. I'm like, look, I've done my time. Like I'm trying to make the succession plan here for you ladies, but you got to do what I did.
Yeah.
You got to earn your time.
And we've seen with each generation, there's sometimes a work ethic that changes. And so
I saw it huge after COVID.
Yes.
Big change in work ethic.
For sure. And,
which is kind of scary because that's the backbone of America, right? You think about that.
It is. And they just need to think about that. And that work ethic is so important. It's, but, that's that. And that's what will bring you opportunity, too, because you never know where your next opportunity is.
Yeah.
And by putting those efforts in and meeting people and conversing and all of that can bring some great opportunities to you. And I am, as I said earlier, I'm a big believer in that. And then make those happen.
Yeah, be curious about people. That's what I tell my girls. Be curious about other people and what they do, and what their story is. Because it doesn't matter how old you are, you can learn something from someone else.
Yeah.
Every day, if you're looking for it, you'll find it.
You earlier you touched on the food service and the stadiums that you were involved in. And what I want to do is ask you about Super Bowl, the Olympics, because apparently you participated in some of those stadiums. Am I correct on that?
Yes. Yeah.
How is that different from a regular Sunday football game?
Jeez.
As far as bringing the product in.
Well, I'll tell you, it is hugely different.
I was going to say the whole plan probably changes.
It does, and it's now on Super Bowls on the food service side. It's almost a 4-day plan because you have things going on, major things going on the whole time. But Super Bowl Sunday is one where you do huge volume. Huge volume. You can do $6 to $10 million in food service on a Super Bowl Sunday.
That's the revenue part of it?
That's the revenue
and then
part of it.
what's the net look like after that kind of revenue?
Well, when you get to net, the thing that ends up happening is the team gets the majority share of that. So people wonder, why are those beers $15? Because the team is taking 45 to 55% of.
I'm so glad you touched on this because we talked about this.
Of the gross amount. I think back early.
Where does that revenue go, Ken? Like I know you said the team gets 40 to 50%, but does that go into like operating the stadium, general costs? Or where does that go?
It goes. I mean, they budget all their expenses and it goes towards operations, but. Part of that, if the numbers are big enough, also goes towards player payroll and so forth. But next to ticket revenue, and major professional sports television revenue too, but food service revenue becomes maybe your third biggest revenue source.
What's the number one? Is it ticket sales?
Ticket sale. Well, television sale. Television revenue is the biggest one, and then ticket revenue. Then you have food service and merchandise and obviously other advertising and so forth in the stadium, but those are all big ones. But Super Bowl Sunday, the other difference, besides the volume, there's a difference. The excitement is just unbelievable. I used to, and one of the reasons I've worked so many Super Bowls is I did it as a volunteer for many of them where I wasn't involved in the food service and ran the program operation. And,
That would be fun.
It was a lot of work, but it was fun too. And we'd have the run of those stadiums for 4 days, usually from Thursday to Sunday, and it just I'd get to the stadiums around 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. And sometimes if it was an East Coast game, leave around 2 in the morning. And it just, you were exhausted when you left, but it was a fun day, too.
Yeah.
And all of that was money we raised for charity that became, over the years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it was just a lot of fun. I remember
That's amazing.
walking into a stadium out on the West Coast one morning, about 6:30, John Gruden and Mike Tirico come walking in. They're going to do the pregame show. And I said to Tirico, I said, "Whoa, you got a long day, don't you?" He says, "No." He goes, "After this pregame show's over, I'm on a plane back to Detroit. I'll be watching this game in my living room."
That's cool.
That always stuck with me for some reason.
Can we show off your bling?
Oh, sure.
Is that lightning?
That's a lightning ring from 2020.
Wow.
And because I had been involved with the Lightning a little earlier than that, I was able to get a ring, and it just, it is exciting.
Yeah.
And that's,
Can I ask the ultimate question? Can I try it on?
Sure. Oh,
It
sure.
might fit my- won't
I
even
let
fit my
people
thumb.
try it on all the time.
It's so
Sometimes
heavy.
I can't get it off.
It's
but-
look. Was this weight 10 pounds? Oh my gosh! Look at this, Pat. It
Oh.
doesn't even. Oh, it fits my thumb.
And it's really funny.
Wow, you
I
have
don't think
small fingers.
I don't think she's aware of this. Who gets those rings when a championship is won?
They give it to everyone.
Everybody.
Usually, yeah.
Right. Even
Sure,
some of the
I have-
sportscasters.
Yeah, thanks. Oh,
I-
yeah. If you work for the team, you definitely the
Yeah, Ronnie
sportscaster.
Lane has one of those. A
One
Super
of my
Bowl ring.
friends worked for the Bucs doing IT when they won the Super Bowl, and they got one too.
Yeah,
I thought that was cool.
When a team wins, first of all, it's lucrative for them. But when a team wins, they're generous with those rings. That's
So
for
how do
sure.
they make their money when they win? Like, I mean, obviously the event's over, right? So how does that turn into revenue?
Well, it turns into revenue through a number of ways. Excitement is one. So if they're not already selling out of season tickets
For the
they
next year.
sell more season
Okay.
tickets for the next year, or they can increase pricing. Also, there always are tickets held back for regular game tickets, and they can sell out of those when they're good. Merchandise is another big one, though. Jesus, a championship merchandise is just huge, and people
Oh yeah.
want it.
Oh yeah.
It's
It's crazy that they have all of it pre-printed, and then they discard whoever doesn't win. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's something that, about 30 years ago. Matter of fact, when I was involved in the merchandise, sometimes, boy, we were told you had to guard the stuff that was the loser stuff.
Oh, I bet.
Because they didn't want any of that out. I think eventually it gets sent to Bangladesh or something like that.
Oh, they don't send it to the incinerator?
No, I think they actually do give it overseas someplace.
Oh, wow.
To the needy.
I want
So-
to ask you, probably the answer on this is going to be beer. But the biggest seller in a stadium, what product, food or drink, and do you eat hot dogs?
I was gonna say if it's baseball, isn't it hot
So
dogs?
beer is the biggest one. As food goes, it is hot dog / sausage products. And I've been eating hot dogs all my life. And back when I was a vendor, and we were charged by the roll because that was easier to count than the hot dogs. And so by the end of a day, I'd have 10 or 12 extra hot dogs. I never ate the roll because that was worth 35 cents. The hot dog, though, I'd eat 10 of those at a time.
And what hot dog was that? Would you like to sell it? When somebody goes out and buy a hot dog, now the 4th is behind us, but, for some summer picnics, what should we buy?
Well, yeah, people have all their likes. I mean, I do like Nathan's. I like, I like Ballpark Franks too. But depending on the area of the country, people just have different likes. So what I may have liked in Philadelphia wouldn't go down here. And when I came here, I ended up basically coming up with our own mix, but I needed local people to help me with that because I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. So we came up with our own mix of hot dog, and we actually, had that packaged and labeled.
I mean, that's likely big business, right? Like if you're talking about some of these hot dog manufacturers, because they're probably trying to outbid their competition so that their hot dog gets sold in the venue.
Oh yeah, they want to do that because they certainly want to then sell it in the supermarkets.
Right? Yeah. That people see.
Before we get out of here, I want to ask him this:
Okay.
Would you do all this again if you could do it all over, or what would you change?
Or would you do something
What would
different?
you tweak?
I would do it in a minute. I've been so fortunate, and 50 years of, just having fun at what I'm doing. And yes, it has been lucrative too, so I'm sure that's been an added part of it. But it has been so much fun. I loved every minute going into those arenas and venues and working. And so I wouldn't change a whole lot. And I enjoyed the sports ownership part of it too. That was a lot of fun also.
What was your favorite part of your career?
The favorite part of my career,
Like the part you look back at the whole thing, you're like, this was the most rewarding. I would do it again just for this.
I will tell you that it's really, whether it was the sports or the food service part, seeing the patrons enjoy themselves. That was the favorite part to me. I just enjoyed that so much.
Who would you like to sit down and watch a baseball game with, of all of the people that you've met in the past, or somebody that you'd like to do that with?
It's funny. I actually got to go fishing with Stan Musial on Art Pepin's boat 40-some years ago, I think it was. And that just popped into my mind, Pat, when you asked the question. I think if I were, just looking at an individual, I'd maybe go back to my Philadelphia days and think about the manager, Gene Mauch, who was a strategist and, not a real sexy answer there, but one that certainly baseball aficionados would know. And then I look at guys like Clayton Kershaw, Sandy Koufax. He was my favorite ball player. I'd love listening to an analysis, sitting at a game with Sandy Koufax. That would be cool. I love it. I do have an autographed baseball of his.
I love it. This has been a fascinating topic of conversation. I hope that our listeners have enjoyed a little one-off today.
Well,
we talk about a lot of real estate stuff on the show.
Well, I hope they've enjoyed it too. I've enjoyed being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was lovely to have you as my guest. I look forward to connecting with you again. And again, you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. You can pick us up on any podcast player of your choice. Follow us on social media. Like and subscribe, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. We're everywhere where you're looking for us. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, and in the house today we have Mr. Ken Young. Thanks for being my guest. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Love where you live, or we're going to fix it. Welcome home.